I need to say this out loud, not for clicks, clout, or sympathy, but because keeping it inside almost destroyed me for a very long time. You see, online gambling didn't just hit me once, it cycled me over and over and over and over again. And you know what's the scariest part? Every round felt like this time would be different. I was trapped in a gambling cycle. This was my gambling cycle. I would get money, gamble it away, win a little, put it all back, borrow some more, lose again, start chasing the losses, chase harder, repeat, no reset, no clean slate whatsoever. So when I ran out of my own money, I would start borrowing monies in order for me to be able to gamble again and again and again. It was such a cycle, always on repeat, no pause whatsoever. It was so weird because each and every time that money touched my hand or even my bank account, my brain flipped a switch. It was so instantly, my brain stopped functioning. All the monies that I got, they stopped being monies intended for the business or my family's upkeep or my personal upkeep. And remember, I hadn't been done paying the debts that I had made via the casino. So instead of paying off those debts, I went into an even much deeper cycle. And every time I would tell myself that just one session, I'm looking at the time, just 30 minutes. When I pick up any win, I'm out of here. I'm taking the money and I'm gone. But it just never happened. It became a cycle that went on and on and on. Get money, gamble the money away, lose the money, chase the losses. It went on and on and on. It was just, whew. Each time I'd get money, I'd just tell myself that, you know what, I'm gambling with this money just to double it. I'm gambling with this money because I need more money to get ahead. And just like that, I would start gambling with the money and all the money would be gone. The first loss didn't even hurt anymore. I expected it. I think at some stage, even the losing became addictive. Not sure if you can relate to this, but stay with me. Losing to gambling didn't even hurt anymore. What hurt was the silence right after the damage had been done. That empty moment where I would stare at my phone and my stomach would drop and my chest would feel so tight because I already know that I'm in deep trouble. The money is gone and I need to go and borrow some more money in order for me to chase the losses. Sometimes while gambling, I would pick up a win, not a miracle win, not a life-changing win, but a win just enough to mess with my head. And suddenly my brain would scream, you see, you're not stupid. There is money there. So you keep going and going and going. So this was a cycle, and I thought to myself that the more I gambled, the more money I would make. The truth is that it got to a point whereby no win was ever enough because remember, I had losses from yesterday, losses from the previous day, losses from the previous week, the previous month, the previous 3 months. So it was so bad for me. That small win that I had picked up was already spent, by the pain that came before it. So instead of me withdrawing the win and taking it away, I pushed even harder, and when all that money was gambled away, I had run out of money now. I would have to come up with stories. I didn't stop gambling when all the money was gone. I went and borrowed more money. I became so shameless. I even borrowed money from people whom I knew I was actually doing better than, you know, anything for me to get the money. Because while being trapped in the gambling cycle, desperation becomes the order of the day. And that's where the real shame settled in because when I was borrowing monies, I'd borrow monies with lies, under false pretense. And I would also make false promises as to when I was going to pay that money. Yes, that was false because I wasn't even sure where or how I was going to get that money to pay it back to whomever I was borrowing from. So it got to a stage whereby my life was in so much danger. I was owing illegal loan sharks. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. Locally, we call them mashonisa. Say it, mashonisa. Yes, those are basically illegal loan sharks. So I was owing them as well because I was desperate. I had to go back into that cycle and chase. And the more I chased, the more I lost. It was terrible. It got to a stage whereby anytime I would click deposit, my heart would beat so fast. Chasing losses is different. Chasing losses is not like just gambling for fun or playing for the escape. Chasing losses is very hard and difficult because you feel the need to do that. You feel that pressing need. You feel that dire compulsion. You feel that if I don't chase this loss, then it's over. Chasing losses is not exciting at all. While chasing those losses, my hands and feet used to shake so much, and my heart would be racing. At some point, it felt as if my heart was gonna bounce out of my mouth. It was so hectic, because when chasing losses, your thoughts become so narrow and you're not trying to win anymore. You're trying to escape the pain that you have already caused. And trust me, the more you chase the losses, the more you tend to lose. It's as if their system has a certain algorithm that picks up your desperation. And because you're desperate, you're going to lose even more and more and more. And that hurts so much. And you know what's the worst part in all of this? Even if you do pick up a win while you're chasing losses, it's just not enough. It's never going to be enough because, data's got a memory. You still have losses that are from yesterday, and you still have last week's regrets that are waiting. And whew, it's so messy, and when you think back, there's actually even losses from the couple of months that you need to recover. So who chasing losses, I think, was the worst part of the gambling cycle. The more I talk about this, I realize that online gambling didn't ruin me overnight, but it eroded me completely because it even stole away the honesty that I had with myself. I just couldn't trust myself anymore. My self esteem took a knock, my confidence took a knock. I became someone who was fine on the outside, but so broken on the inside. Online gambling broke me to the core. I smiled while calculating my losses, and I laughed while drowning in guilt. And you know what's the worst part? I was now someone whom I didn't even recognize anymore. The desperation from chasing losses, it took all my confidence away. And the shame of having to borrow from people whom I knew really well were not doing so good financially. I was trapped in this online gambling cycle for a very long time, until this one time I had a moment, not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet. I looked at my phone and I realized I wasn't even enjoying online gambling anymore. I was just trapped in a loop. I was in a cycle and I didn't know how to exit that deadly cycle. And upon the realization that I was trapped in this online gambling cycle and it was hard for me to exit, I couldn't find a door, a way out. I became so stressed. I became so scared, realizing that I'm trapped in this cycle. It scared me even more than losing money itself, you know. And I decided that, look, maybe this is the time for me to have a turnaround. Something deep within me was screaming at me, telling me that winning was just never the point because even when I'd win, I'd still take the money back there. So that money was just never a solution. I wasn't chasing profit anymore, but I was chasing relief. I was chasing that numbness. I was chasing that false hope of hitting it big. And I also realized that I wasn't just chasing losses anymore, but I was also chasing a pause from reality. You know, when you're feeling that adrenaline while gambling online, it's sort of like an escape from reality and it feels good. I don't want to lie. So at some point, I realized that, look, this is just not even about the money anymore. You know, online gambling promised me that escape, that feeling of numbness, the feeling of escaping from my responsibilities while having the false hope that I'm going to make lots of money. And that's where I decided to pause. I paused a bit and then I started doing some self introspection. But of course, you know that when your brain is still hooked onto gambling, there's that inner voice that will always tell you that, no, just one more time, go stake higher this time around. You're going to make so much money. You're going to recover all your losses, at least for this year. So I think that was the voice that sort of gave me the false hope over and over again. And even when I didn't want to chase losses anymore, I just find myself chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. And that cycle was so terrible for me. It felt as if it had so much hold over me because the more I would decide that I won't gamble, the more I would tend to go back and gamble. So it was so bad for me because the only time that I felt satisfied was when I had no money at all. I could control myself when I didn't have money, but as soon as the money came through, it became a problem because I would start by chasing the adrenaline. And upon getting that adrenaline, now the money is gone. I'd start chasing those losses again and again and again. And the worst thing about the gambling cycle is that it's spiraling downwards. You tend to not stop until you hit rock bottom. And that's exactly what happened to me. If you've watched this video this far, I want to thank you so much for watching, and it gives me so much hope that I'm not alone and you can also relate to this. So I'm not here to say that I'm fully healed. I'm not here to say that it's easy to quit gambling, but I'm here to say that I finally see the gambling cycle for exactly what it is. And seeing it is the first crack in the cage. So if you're still watching and you recognize yourself in this story, I need you to know that you are not weak, you are not broken. You are just trapped in a system, and this system is designed to keep you spinning. It's designed to keep you losing. The good news is that cycles can be broken, not with a big win from gambling, but with an honest step that you'll take today. Like personally, today I choose honesty over hiding, and I'm choosing healing over chasing, and I'm choosing reality over illusion. And right there, this is the biggest win that I've ever had in such a long time. Thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Catch you on the next video. Love you back.